It's my pleasure to be here. It has been a long journey since 1999, and it's something that really today Donna and I are here as much as we're here as psychologists and social scientists. We're here as really reporters or correspondents to help share with you some of the story that has been unfolding over the last dozen years or so, and to let you experience some of it firsthand. And to get started, it would be helpful to ask, how many of you have heard of the VIA survey? And how many of you have taken the VIA survey or had a client take the? Okay, most of you. And then for how many of you is this brand new? Okay, that's great. That's most of you. Okay. So we started basically in 1999 when Marty Seligman was starting to conceive of the need for a positive psychology, something to complement and supplement the focus that psychology had had up to date, which was on the negative end of the human experience, human suffering, and how do we remediate. And we got together, and like Susan said, we formed a nonprofit organization to do the work of trying to understand what's best about human beings, what are our best characteristics, and how do we use those best characteristics to flourish, to build our best lives as individuals, but also together. It has been, we were really curious as to what would happen if we put out into the world an instrument that was scientifically valid and reliable for measuring what's best about human beings. So to take it beyond the step of where people would just have conversations about that topic, and with not a particular nomenclature or language to focus on, and without a particular way of assessing those characteristics. And what would happen if we put that out into the world, a way for people to measure what's best about themselves? And that's what we did. And what we've observed is, it never stops being amazing to us. We have, at this point, people, let's see if this will work. People from all over the world, every country name that's coming up on that slide, people have actually taken the VIA survey all over the world. And so we have people who are taking it because of their interest, not because of any particular marketing campaign or not because of a sales department or anything, just really word of mouth, organic growth. It has resonated with people's hearts around the world, and researchers around the world have been taking the measurement instrument and being able to study the characteristics that I'll be covering. We're going to, just as a quick overview, we're going to be, I want to, instead of you hearing from me what other people's experiences have been with the VIA survey and with character strengths, because we've been traveling around the world, and for myself, I wasn't satisfied simply reading scientific reports, and I wasn't simply satisfied by hearing second and third hand reports. I wanted to hear it firsthand from people, and so we have some videotape that we can share of people telling me, because I was interviewing them, telling me what their experience had been. So I'll share that with you. That's the real people. A quick overview, since a lot of you are new to character strengths, of what we're talking about, what I really mean here by character strengths. And then we'll do a group exercise so you can have a personal direct experience with it. and then Donna will share her own journey as a coach, integrating character strengths and how it has affected her, and then we'll end with a vision. So let's start, whoops, I don't want to start that yet. So the first two people I'm going to introduce you to are Noelle and Estella, and I ran across both of them. They're in a large healthcare practice, from a large healthcare practice in Wisconsin, a healthcare practice that had grown from 7 offices to 13 offices to 25 offices, ultimately to, at the point I was talking to them, 54 different offices. And along the way, they had lost their soul, as the CEO told me. They had lost kind of the thing that really motivated them in all of that rapid growth over the years. And so he kind of tried to figure out how was he going to reinvigorate his company, and he came across VIA and studied it and ended up bringing it into the company. And he had his employees take it. But this first person is actually a patient of his. And the patient, Noelle, as you'll hear, I'll just go over it very quickly. Well, let me back up. So what he did is he had, in this case, Noelle, or in the next case, the employee, take the VIA survey, and then he sat down and went over their results with them, and it launched a discussion and exploration for both of them. And Noelle was somebody who had had traumatic experiences growing up that had caused her to experience a lot of anxiety and panic. That was, she couldn't find any solution to it, seeing all the doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists and chiropractors and allied health professionals, et cetera. Just wasn't getting anywhere. And then here's, I'll let her tell you her experience. I have one caveat, which is at the end here when I saw the clip that the video guy had pulled out, it sounds, it's so weird because it sounds kind of like an infomercial or something, because she's gonna share what her feelings are about it. And I want to say that because I'm kind of a little bit embarrassed to play it, but it is what it is. It is what she said, so.
Well, I'm a naturopath, and I do other energy therapies, and I work a lot with what we call nonverbal psychology. And I grew up in the Milwaukee area, and I had a very challenging growing up years, and personally suffered from depression in my 20s and anxiety disorder. I had daily panic attacks. There was a lot of fear there, and I was just stuck. I've had much trauma earlier in my life, and there was definitely a disconnection from feeling and thinking. And so he introduced me to VIA. It was amazing how much I felt it really put me down on paper. And like my top 5 categories were awesome for what I do, but not awesome for who I am and my own self-care. And it afforded really for me to be very successful in my profession, but not in my personal life. The second to last value there was humor for me. I think I was really in very much denial because like I said, I left his office thing, and I thought I was going to prove him wrong. I thought that I had humor. I thought there was nothing. Maybe I thought that should have been farther up, or that it was somehow inaccurate. But I really set out to prove him wrong, that this wasn't going to make any difference. I committed to myself that I was going to spend 30 days making sure that I filled my day with humor as much as I could on my off times. So I spent hours on YouTube looking up, trying to find something funny, and I couldn't. It was just things were not funny to me. I found some clips from YouTube, and Dr. Bouch and I have joked about Carol Burnett ever since, because I, for whatever reason, found Carol Burnett funny. I had to really search. I mean, that's something old. That's not something, current. And kind of started with that, and things got funnier. The more that I laughed, the more things got funny. And the easier it was for me to laugh out loud, because I could think that they were funny internally. Like if I was watching a funny movie, I would be like, I would have a funny feeling inside, but I would never actually, and I might smile, but I would never actually laugh out loud. And so as the process continued, I began to laugh out loud. And pretty soon, lots of things were funny. And it got to a point of where I just, there was a definite shift of all the worry and all of the frustration and fear that was there about moving forward with my health issue was not as big of a deal anymore. And it was like somebody turned on the light switch. The way that I see it, my top character strengths were more brain-centered than heart-centered. And so the heart-centered qualities, I feel, have been the ones that have been enlivened. To me, it was a miraculous thing to be actually connected with those feelings of laughter and humor. It was amazing. Prior to when Dr. Bouch introduced me to VIA, I would have, in terms of thriving, I would have rated on a scale from 0 to 10, I would have rated myself a 3. And now I would say I'm an 8. Wow. I've stopped overworking. I'm definitely a driven person and tend to do the workaholic thing. And I've stopped overworking, and I've started taking vacations, and I've started actually doing things that are enjoyable and fun. So that's a big deal. The ability of change from spending 30 or 40 minutes doing a test is priceless. It's simple, it's amazingly accurate, it's straightforward, and I think that the benefits and the amount of things that could open up to you as a result is very little risk. I mean, there's no risk, so why not do it? I think everybody should do it.
So that's the part that it's kind of weird, but that's the way she feels after having had the experience where she had been getting nowhere for years and years and years and years. And then what happens on this test is there are 24 character strengths. You take the test and you get your results, and they're rank ordered from top to bottom. So she was talking about, I looked at my top ones, and they were good for my work, and I could understand why I was successful at work, but I didn't feel they weren't what was working for me personally in my personal life. And then she identified this one that was way down on the list, which is called humor and playfulness, and her therapist had the wisdom, her doctor had the wisdom to get her to focus on that, and with a little work, everything turned in her life, as she said. And this is something we hear a lot, and I think maybe you'll hear more of this with one of the moms that you'll hear. They go like that, something clicked, something clicks. The next person is an employee of Dr. Bouch, who's the CEO of this organization, who she referred to. And she runs the company. She's like the business manager, very successful. And here's her story. I'll let her tell it to you, I think.
It's always been about, what's wrong with you? So you have this weird picture of who you are because of what other people have said, well, this is who you are. And so for me, I've never really formulated my true core person. I thought I knew who I was, but not really, because I've had so many other, people telling me, well, this is, just, I guess, giving, their perception of who I am, and for me, just sort of believing what I hear. And so I took my VIA. There were, strains in my VIA that kind of confused me. And so when he explained it to me, it started becoming more, a whole lot more sense to me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I do understand it. And so that to me, I think this whole process that I've gone through in the last month and a half has done great wonders for just really opening up my eyes and really truly understanding and having a better sense of who I am, because I think I've pretty much suppressed that all my life because, of just having people telling me, well, this is who you are, or this is what you should think, or this is how you should behave. And so with that, I just never really, really formulated my person until, I don't know, it's just kind of weird, until last month. It became, I think for me, became real when things were written down on paper and you're like, oh, that's really who I am. And it's been kind of interesting. It's been a kind of a transformation for me in a more of internal into external life, into a, sort of growing out of myself and really allowing those strains to really come out into play and not feel like I have to suppress that. That's who I am and should be proud of that, So, yeah, it's definitely been a huge eye-opener for me.
So how many of us personally, ourselves, or work with clients who know that pain of being separated from themselves in important ways along the way due to influences around us who encourage us to focus on their expectations of us and what they want us to be and who they want us to be, and we lose a part of ourselves. And then when she was reintroduced to herself, it was very touching and transformative for her. The next two people come from China. There's a teacher in China who's been teaching 6-year-olds with the via character strengths and has been sending us video of her experience. And here's a mother of one of the 6-year-olds who, her 6-year-old started the school year as a very fearful, anxious young child. And here's her story.
Ever since Hudson was very young, he's always been afraid of the water. There were many things that he's been afraid of, and that sort of consumed, I think, his, I think childhood in some ways is this fear of water, this fear of dogs, this fear of insects. But then this year, I think things just came together for him. And on top of that, learning about character strengths and Jennifer identifying that he has shown bravery just caused like a reaction. I think it's really because of learning about his character strengths and seeing himself in a more positive way, I think has helped him to relax and realize that he can to open his mind, I guess. And
it sounds like he's become more of a risk taker too.
Yes. He's less fearful. He believes in himself more.
So to have a young child, 6 years old, in that place in life where you can imagine going down one trajectory of being fearful and anxious about most things in life, and then having an experience because a teacher introduced him to this work, and then being able to switch and go down another path of, as his mother was saying, he believes in himself. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Here's a 6-year-old from that class, and who was asked, well, how do you use character strengths to solve problems?
And what strengths do you use? Which character strengths do you feel like you use to help you solve problems?
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness. How do you use forgiveness to help you solve problems?
Like, I other people do something bad to me, and then I it's okay, like that.
Like you just say it's okay,
Yeah.
like that.
It's so precious. I say that all the time now. I go, it's okay. This last person I want to introduce you to is a 10-year-old who is from a school child in the United States whose teacher was doing this work in the 4th grade. And he was asked, what are character strains? Because this teacher, the way he taught character strains, he didn't tell kids what character strains were. He asked them to define it. He asked them to go back to their homes and talk to their parents and what are character strains, and to learn it that way. And from the mouths of babes, none of us PhDs could have come up with this definition.
Character strengths are the keys to your heart that makes your spirit rise and allows you to do things better.
The keys to your heart that allow your spirit to rise and do things better. And that's what we really have been experiencing and seeing and in the workplace too, when people are able to bring out their character strengths, connect that with what they are doing, to use their talents and skills and abilities as vehicles for expressing who they are, their performance gets enhanced. Okay, so I wanted you to hear just from other people instead of me telling you that other people find this stuff useful. For the new folks who aren't familiar, in about the year 2000, Marty Seligman launched an effort. I asked him to bring together the top scholars in the world and to start working on the question of what's best about human beings. How do we start to create a science? How do we start to identify what are the fundamental elements of what's best about human beings? Because everybody has their own notions, and the Boy Scouts have their list, and schools have their lists, and the Girl Scouts have their lists, and everybody has their lists and opinions. And I wanted to kind of see, if you really look at what everybody has been writing about and saying, and the best minds in both theology and religion and philosophy across the millennia, are there any universals that pop out? And so we created a 3-year project, and Marty led that project and brought in numbers of people to work on it. And because I didn't want it to be just another person's opinion, I didn't want it to be my opinion or Marty Seligman's opinion or Chris Peterson's opinion. I wanted it to be bigger than that. I wanted it to be the best thinking if people spent a lot of time sitting down thinking about this and figuring out, how do we start this new science? We have to start somewhere. So we have to make our best shot here. And we want to find things that are universal. They're not culturally dependent. They're true about human beings 100 years ago. They're true about people today. They're true about the Inuit Indians and the Maasai tribesmen. They're true about people on Wall Street. They're true about us sitting in this room. That's what we're looking for, universally shared characteristics that account for what's best about us as human beings. In doing the research, what they came up with was basically 6 categories of virtues and 24 specific strengths that nest under those 6 categories. We put it out on the web, like I told you earlier. We put it out, it's for free, and we're approaching 2 million people who have taken the survey now, and it just keeps growing and growing. It's in multiple languages. I think we have it in 17 languages now in over 240 countries. And I think last count we have about 120 published scientific papers in, when I say we don't generate it. This is all by independent scientists. But in published journals, about 120. The reason I put this quote up is, besides that Howard Gardner is here at Harvard, but the reason is how many of you are familiar with his work on multiple intelligences? Some of you are. What he did many years ago was to take a concept of intelligence, which people thought of as kind of unidimensional, and dimensionalize it. And then when he saw the work that we were doing on taking the concept of character, which people tend to think of as you have good character or bad character, as kind of unidimensional or not highly dimensional, and saw that what we had done was something similar to what he had done, which was to dimensionalize this aspect of the human psychology, character. He recognized that it was going to be important work. So these are the categories and the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So for those of you who, again, are new to this, these are the categories. The category of wisdom, courage, justice, humanity, temperance, and transcendence. These are the kind of the big categories when the researchers kind of laid out everything that Aristotle and Plato and Buddha and Boy Scouts and everybody had kind of written, and they kind of laid it out on a table. There was this kind of this 80-20 thing of where a lot of it could be captured under these 6 concepts, and then of course these six constructs are so broad. It's kind of like, well, how do you bring definition to them? And that's where what they did is they created a very rigorous decision-making criteria where they created about 10 different criteria that would cause something to be included as a character strength, and then set the rule that any of these characteristics needed to meet 8 out of the 10 criteria, and then it could be included, because as they sat down, there were hundreds of possibilities of what could be included as putting some meat on these 6 bones. And so you can see the range: creativity, judgment, curiosity, love of learning under the category of how do we acquire knowledge and use it to become wise. Bravery, persistence, authenticity, zest under courage, and I don't have to read the rest of them. You can see that, and it's in your book as well. So these were conceptually derived, right? Because there was no science when we were starting. There was just everything else that had been written out of the humanities and theology. And so we started here conceptually. Well, now we have a big database, and we've been able to actually look empirically and do statistical procedures that are, that's called like a factor analysis, to try to see whether things really fall out this way or fall out differently. And I'm not going to go into, there's a new kind of the mega factor analytic paper that is in press and will be coming out. It looked at, I think, over 400,000 cases. And so it's at a level that none of the prior factor analyses could be as powerful. And that's coming out. But basically, what it did is it supported a lot of this, not all of it. So everything doesn't kind of fall out exactly like this looking at our data now. But I'd say probably 80% or so it's quite, we were surprised at how accurate it was after we collected the data. Let's see. Like I said, there have been a variety of people have taken what we have, independent researchers in labs, not people who are hired by us to do research, but instead people who that's what they do in their life, and they took an interest in our work. And I'm going to give you just a highlight of some of the findings. That higher scores on character strengths have been related to higher life satisfaction. Marty Seligman did a quite remarkable study. The reason it was remarkable is for a couple reasons. One is that he used the most rigorous experimental design of a random assignment and placebo-controlled kind of design, so a strong experimental design. But what he was testing was basically one of the weakest interventions that any of us could ever imagine. All he had was people go online and read a short little paragraph that said, take your top 5 strengths, look at your top 5 strengths from your VIA survey, and over the next week, think of new ways to use those character strengths in your life. That's it. I mean, there was no person involved. You just go online and read it. So a very, very weak intervention, but a strong experimental design. And then, and the findings were just surprising to me, at least, because he found a significant increase in happiness, a decrease in depression, and the effect, he measured it over up through 6 months, and the measurement sustained itself. I mean, the results sustained themselves. So it was kind of a remarkable study in my mind. We find that at work, people who are expressing their character strengths have greater engagement, satisfaction, and performance. With young people who are using their signature strengths, let me say something real quickly, is when you get your results, we think of, there's one set of strengths, some subset of strengths that we call signature strengths, and those are strengths that people consider very core to their identity. So core to their identity that if they weren't using those strengths, they would feel like they're not really being themselves fully. And so people really do identify that some of the strengths are that important to them. They're core to who, they feel like they're core to who they are. And then there are other strengths that are kind of ones that we call situational strengths, ones that aren't kind of generally true of us, but when the circumstance arises, we can bring that strength to bear at the moment. So we might not be generally courageous, but if something fearful happens to us, we can become courageous in the moment. And that's a situational strength. And then we have kind of the other strengths that we possess in kind of medium and lesser degrees, and we can work on those and we can build those strengths. Alex Lindley in the UK has done work on using signature strengths, helps improve goal achievement. Chris Peterson has done work that shows that the strengths of the heart versus strengths of the head, and just very generically what that means is kind of the strengths that have more to do with your feelings and emotions and compassion and all of that, versus strengths that are related to acquiring knowledge. The strengths of the heart are much more important in terms of life satisfaction. The research has found that character strengths can be learned and they can be trained. Here's a study that just came out this last month out of an Israeli researcher who was looking at how character strengths, how different character strengths, it's kind of like, well, what are character strengths good for? And it kind of, well, it depends which different character strengths are good for different things. She was looking at the adaptation or transition of students from like elementary school to middle school, so transition periods, and trying to look at it through the lenses of character strengths. And she saw that the knowledge and temperance strengths were related to how well kids achieved and performed in school. The interpersonal strengths were more related to their social functioning at school. And the temperance and transcendence strengths were related more to the student's personal sense of well-being. As a result of all of the interest, people have looked to VIA to say, well, can you give us some tools that can help us with we're coaches or we're teachers or whatever. And so here are 3 tools that are available. So the survey is for free. You can get a free top-down ranking, and then you can get any of these reports for a cost. And these go into much more depth. The VIA Pro team, the VIA Pro in the middle is 30 some odd pages, and it really gives you as a coach, if you're working with an individual, it gives you as a coach a lot of information and a lot of tips and a lot of practice guides for how to work with that individual on their character strength results. On the right is the Discover, the Via Me, and that's kind of, we created that because we have a lot of people coming to our site who aren't working with a professional. They're interested in their own personal growth, they're working on it themselves. So we created something that somebody could just kind of grab and take the results and kind of start to do something with on their own if they had that kind of self-initiative. And then on the left is a newer report that aggregates for a team of people, for a group of people. It aggregates their character strengths results, and it gives some interesting perspectives on a group of people working together and how they can perform better. And one of the interesting things that I find coming out of here, and I'd be interested to, at some point, knowing what you think about it, because your expertise is in leadership, but one of the things that comes out of this report is we see most of the time there are individuals that have character strengths that nobody else on their team possesses. And what we find is those character strengths can become relevant under different conditions. And that's why I kind of think of them as kind of conditional leadership strengths. You know, that there are strengths that if I'm in a team meeting and let's say my top strength is creativity and we're at a point in our meeting where creativity is relevant, I might step forward and play a leadership role in that meeting for a period of time until the meeting progresses. And then as the meeting progresses further on and lots of ideas are out on the table, there's another person on the team who might uniquely to the team possess perspective as one of their top character strengths. And that's the person who will step forward at that moment in time and lead the team in terms of summarizing. So here's where we've been, here are our ideas. And then somebody who might have prudence, which is our very planful people, might then step forward and say, and here's what I think our next steps might be. And so in a dynamic team, you have different people kind of moving forward, stepping forward, and you know, I think of that as kind of a conditional or momentary leadership role as opposed to something that's more positional. So that kind of stuff comes out in the report. And I'll turn it over to you now. Turn it off?
No,
on?
to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, so I've been married to Neal for 37 years, which is not that going to be interesting to you, except to say that I knew that he would talk more than he was supposed to. So, so instead of doing this exercise, I'm going to tell you about it, and then I'm going to tell you a story. So since many of you are coaches, maybe most of you are coaches, you may do this with your clients already. And I'm going to say it's the importance of narrative. So we all know that we really describe ourselves in so many ways when we tell the stories of our lives, right? And so much is revealed in those stories, and what we really aim to do is sort of capture the essence of the story, capture the essence of the individual within their story, and then we try to hold a mirror to that person so that they can get a sense of who they are and what they actually accomplished through that story. So one of the stories that we describe a lot, I use this a lot before I even have people take the survey, is to have people talk about a time when they felt that they were at their best, when they were in the zone, when everything was like hitting for them. And they were very energized by it. They felt like they did things within that context that made a real difference, and the outcome was related to that. And I listened to that story. I listened really carefully to that story because I'm listening for particular information. First, I want to see how they operated and how they see themselves. But more to the point, I really want to put my ear to what strengths they feel are part of their experience. So I'm listening for the strengths that emerge from the way they describe themselves in this experience. So I listen carefully, and I don't ask very many questions. I never ask, why did you do that? But I'll ask questions about how you made that happen. And what's amazing about that is that it's very easy to do. What's hard about it, though, is that people tend to be a little bit shy. And so when, a number of people, when you say, I want you to tell me a story of when you were at your best, they feel self-conscious about that. But I encourage them to try to overcome that self-consciousness and move beyond that, because it's so revealing when they do. Okay? So now I want to tell you a personal story. And hopefully this will be helpful. I think it has a lot to do with my personal journey. I'm a psychologist by training, and my work has been with kids and families. And I've really traveled a far distance from my roots, really, in psychology, and have evolved a lot. And so I want to tell you a story of a child that I saw many years ago, and what I thought about that then and what I think about that now. So this is the story of a little girl named Whitney. And my background as a therapist, I worked with very young kids. And I did a lot of play therapy. And so when Whitney came to see me, her caseworker brought her. And she was just this little, frail 4-year-old. And I didn't see them when the caseworker brought her or where they went into my office. I went into my office after the fact. So I walk in my office, and in the corner of the room, in one of my little chairs in the corner, is this little girl. And my typical, I love kids, I've always loved kids. They fill me with light and everything wonderful. And so I walked in the room and I smiled at her. And the first thing that she did was she looked at me, she was really quiet, and then she looked down and she said, "Don't smile and do not look at me." So you can imagine the pain that this little 4-year-old had been through, right? So I'll just give you a teeny bit of background about what she'd been through, just to give you a context. So Whitney's mom was a crack addict. And she had lived with her mom. I mean, she wasn't one of those kids who got removed first thing. She lived with her mom. And then when her mom got unable to care for her, her mom gave her to somebody to care for her. And that was Uncle Henry. And Uncle Henry wasn't really an uncle, and he wasn't really a good caregiver. I mean, Uncle Henry sexually abused Whitney. So by the time I saw Whitney, she'd been removed from mom's care. She was a ward of the state, and she was living in foster care. So lots of trust issues, lots of pain, a lot of agony in this little 4-year-old's life. And I'm not going to tell you the course of my treatment with her, except to say, and I don't want to downplay my role in it. Neal, can you move to the next slide? One more. Oh, no, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put this on here because I think this is a reflection of what I did in therapy with her. So these are my top character strengths, and I'm going to say it's really important. So authenticity is my top strength. Fairness is 2. You can see what they are, right? So as I describe this story, maybe you'll see why it was important for me to be who I was in this treatment session or in these treatment sessions. So it took me months to have her begin to open up and to reveal really who she was. It took me months to be able to smile with this little girl and for her to understand that that smile was not a dangerous thing, that it came from my care and concern and ultimately my love for her, that I could smile at her. And ultimately, she relaxed and she started to reveal herself. Then somewhere in the course of this time, the court decided that we should reunify. Whitney should reunify with her mom. So her mom began to come into treatment sessions. And I'd say her trust level with me had grown and grown, but with her mom, not so much. So my task with these 2 individuals was really to bridge that very painful history and to try to find a way for them to come together again, which I worked very, very, very hard to do. And session after session with the 2 of them, really working at coming to trust each other and understand how they could be together again. And they were doing really, really quite well. until about a week before they were set to move into this apartment that the mom had acquired for the two of them. So I get a phone call from the mom, and very, very low, quiet voice on the other end of the phone, and you probably already know what I'm going to say. She said, "Donna, I have to tell you that I relapsed, and I can't get her back. They won't let me get her back. I relapsed." Well, so what you should also know is that Whitney's mom, all of these things also played in my relationship with Whitney's mom. So I also was not very judging with her. I loved her. I saw sort of the big picture about her. All those things were really relevant, and I was heartsick. I was heartsick about it. And she said to me, would you tell Whitney what happened? And so I said, I'll do my best to tell her what happened. I'll do my best. So next day, Whitney comes in. The caseworker brings Whitney in. And here's this little 4-year-old that I've worked for months and months on my relationship with her and her mother's relationship with her. And she sits down in the room, and she's all light and airy because she's going to go move with her mom in a week. And I say, "Whitney, I have to tell you something that's not very pleasant to tell you. I'm really, really, really sorry to tell you this, but your mom is sick, and she can't do this, and you're going to have to stay in your foster home for a while. She's not going to be able to take you home." Well, this little 4-year-old who had emerged into a little flower and was just a joy turned into a raving maniac in my office. I mean, a raving maniac. So ripping through everything in my office, tearing things off the wall. I had to grab her and hold her to not completely destroy my office. She was so, so upset. So it became clear to me that I was not going to be the one who could carry that message or should carry that message for her, that her mother had to tell her. So I called the mom after the session and I said, I tried. I did my best to tell her, but the truth is that you have to do it yourself. And what's most important, because this is the story she's going to tell herself for the rest of her life, is you're going to have to tell her it was not her fault. She was not responsible for your illness and why she can't go home. So, long pause on the phone. And she says, "Okay, I'll do it for you, Donna. I'll do it for you, and I'll do it for Whitney. And maybe it's the last thing I'll be able to do for the two of you." So I coached her about how to have this conversation. She comes into my office. I had them come in the next day. And I sat on the couch, and they sat in the chairs. And she, in the most courageous thing I've ever seen, explained to her daughter why she was not going to take her home. And I sat and I cried through the whole thing. I didn't say anything. And she told her that it wasn't her fault. And it was a remarkable thing. I've never witnessed anything like it in my life since then. And then at the end of the session, they both said that they wanted to create a picture for each other that they could hold on to and they could carry with them. So really remarkable experience. Now I'm going to tell you where I feel like I sort of failed in this little experiment. And I'm not saying this because I think I didn't do a remarkable job, because I really am proud of the work that I did. But I'm saying this because I feel like I missed an opportunity. So here's what I missed. So Whitney, this 4-year-old who's gone through so much, I'm going to tell you about her character, okay? So first thing to notice about Whitney is that she had an amazing amount of caution when she came in. She was very prudent. She didn't want to trust me. Why should she trust me? I mean, I was just another adult. Adults had only hurt her. So caution was something that was really, really important for her. And caution is something that would also serve her in her life if she could hold on to that. Next thing, honesty. We always say about kids, if you're not honest with kids, they know right away. I mean, it's the first thing that they sort of call you on. But this child, if you weren't honest, if you weren't direct with her, you were not going to have a relationship with this child. So I can tell you that for me, being honest with her, which was very natural to me, was really, really important. But it's also really important for her to know about herself. Next, social intelligence. She had to be able to read me over time to see that I was trustworthy. Now, how does that serve people in life? How will that serve her in her future, right? Then love. So one of the character strengths is the ability to love, but also the ability to be loved. Well, she was as damaged as you could get, but ultimately, she was able to love. She loved her mom. She loved me. But the remarkable thing was she was able to be loved by both of us. And that capacity to be loved in spite of this horrendous situation is going to carry this little girl through life, right? Okay, then the other thing, bravery, right? I mean, what 4-year-old would come into your space and tell you, don't smile at me? You know, an adult, a person that she had no idea who I was or what I was going to do with her, had the capacity to be so brave with me to tell me what she needed. Don't smile at me, I can't trust that yet. And then very finally, forgiveness. This little girl could have all hell break loose and find it in her heart to forgive her mom and move forward, which she did. So I saw her for another year after that, and she did. She did move forward. My missed opportunity was that I did not hold a mirror to her and explicitly share my observations with her about those characteristics. I loved her, I was with her, I helped her grow, but I didn't give her the opportunity to really hear what she was made of and what qualities that she brought to that would carry her through the rest of her life. So in my mind, you know, my journey has really been about helping somebody not just survive the horrors of their life. We need our strengths to do that. But it's how you help to capture what their strengths are to move into the challenges that come before us in life. It's moving from surviving to thriving in the world. And I think that's what coaching is. It's helping people move from survival to thriving. So, my story. So, thank you.
So I was talking to somebody last night, and they described themselves as having they were telling me they were part of an organization, and they had, and kind of, well, I just have kind of a little role here. And what I asked her to think about was that there's no such thing as a little role, because we all get things done by doing things together, and there's not much of anything that has much greatness associated with it that gets done by a person, an individual, and that we all play important roles. And so, as I hope we've made clear, the introduction into the world of a focus on what's best about you. What are these beautiful parts of ourselves? What are these powerful parts of ourselves? What are these parts of ourselves that if we have them pointed out to us, if we pay attention to them in ourselves, but maybe even more importantly, we pay attention to them in other people, we can, in fact, the world can change. And it was 12 years ago when we had our first retreat back when we brought everybody together, and before anything had been formulated, we brought people from all professionals from all walks of life. We had people who had been part of creating the DSM-2, and people who had come from the field of biology, and they knew about classifying things, people who came from psychology, people from philosophy, all sorts of people together. And at the time, I had said that I thought we had the potential, that's a big word, potential to create a fulcrum around which humanity could begin to tip towards its better nature. And our experience so far in these 10 years of watching what is happening is there is a momentum building, and as you hear, and it's coming from many quarters of the world. It's not just coming from the character strengths perspective. That's the one we're most aware of and the one we're reporting on. But you can hear it from many places in the world that there's a recognition that we can focus on what's best about ourselves, we can focus on our strengths, and new possibilities come to be. And what I want to point out is that now more than ever, more than 5 years ago, the conditions exist by which you, us, all of us, the idea of transforming the world is no longer a pie in the sky notion. And the reason is we now have these communication technologies in which we network with each other. We communicate with each other instantaneously. We communicate with each other broadly. Facebook has 800 million growing members. We have the Dalai Lama himself has 5 million followers on Twitter. The Dalai Lama. Oprah Winfrey has 13 million followers who are watching what she tweets. Imagine the power. We have such rich technology now. Let's see what happens here. Not much. Help. And now we have the science of character that we've been going over, in which we have, things published in various journals and everything. And what we also have come to learn about is the positive upward spiral that Barbara Fredrickson talked about, the contagion of positivity. And that when we start to be positive, and what was talked about in the keynotes of mirror neurons, and we have so much that we're acquiring to know that this positivity that creates an upward spiral. So you take this communication technology, you take new science that's emerging in positive psychology, you take this upward spiral, and in fact, new things become possible. We actually can transform the world. And the people that each and every one of you are going to be seeing many, many people. And what I want to make sure is that you understand the ripple effect that each of you have in this world. When you touch somebody, the ripple effect that it has on the people they touch, on and on and on, to the point where the people you saw multiply and multiply and multiply and multiply and multiply, and in a viral way, the world really can change. So I want to leave you with one image. I want you to look at that and see, and just think what you see right away. And a lot of you may see a kind of a rugged coastline, a craggy coastline, rocky, with some trees, to the left, etc. And now what I want you to do is just tilt your head to the left and tell me what you see. And that's what this work is about. It's about shifting a paradigm. And if there's anything that I would hope that would result from our presentation today, is that as you leave this room today, that you leave the room with an idea of tilting your head when you look in the mirror at yourself, and tilting your head when you look at the people who you're coaching, because when you do, you can see the beauty and the powerful characteristics that reside inside of yourself and inside of them. And what we're finding from the scientific research, from all the practical applications, is this really can help you become better in your own lives, become better coaches, and help the people you work with to fulfill the promise that their life holds for themselves. So thank you very much for being here and being interested.